Welcome to the Ironwood Strength Show, where the information is raw, unscripted, and unedited. All right, today is going to be episode 20, Training the High School Athlete. Before we get started, just a reminder, the lecture series videos, the Ironwood Strength Show, is also available as a podcast through Spotify. So if that works out better for you, please check it out there. If you're listening on Spotify right now, check into our YouTube channel. All the lecture series videos are there. And also, there's a lot of other content ranging from shorts down to a minute, all the way exercise demonstrations, just a wide variety of content regarding strength training. So please check that out. All right, today I'm going to talk about training the high school athlete. And the first thing I'm going to say is I have absolutely no experience training high school athletes. None whatsoever. I've never coached a high school athlete. I've never personal trained a high school athlete. I've never taught technique to a high school athlete for 5 minutes. I have no experience with high school athletes. Okay, I've given advice a couple times to people that have asked it. That is about it. And so I'm sure the first thing you're thinking right now is, why are you qualified to talk about how to train high school athletes? And this is why. And this is the perspective that I'm going to come at this from, because I certainly do not or am not going to pretend that I know everything that goes on in the high school setting, because I don't. I'm not going to criticize coaches for the things that they're facing. They have a completely different set of issues at the high school level that they have to face as strength coaches there, that then compared to what college strength coaches face, it's entirely different. I did, however, spend 17 years at the college level, and most of that in the Division I setting. So the perspective that I'm going to take, or the approach that I'm going to take in this video, is that I know what I had to work with. I know what I saw coming out of high school, that I had to come up with a plan, or come up with or figure out how to work with that situation. Okay, and so the how I'm going to relate this is, what could the high school coach do better to better prepare athletes? Because I'm going to tell you, most of the athletes that I got were not prepared for the college level, for the training that takes place. Now, with that said, I think depending upon the high school you're at, and I think there's some that are different, but some of the situations that I've heard are it would be very difficult. I don't know if that's the way to put it. There's a lot of things in the high school setting that are out of the control of the strength coach. So I've heard of high school athletes not lifting at all. I've heard of high school athletes only lifting when their particular sport coach had them lift and brought them in and to lift. I've heard of high school athletes only getting their strength training through their weight training class that they signed up for. So if they didn't sign up for it, they didn't get it. And if they did sign up for it, they're in there for 40 minutes. 35, 40 minutes when you take off the time that they get dressed at the start of the hour and the time that they change back into their school clothes at the end of the hour. So I think there's a lot of things in there that are out of the high school strength coach's control, and that makes it harder for them to accomplish the things that need to be accomplished. But we're going to start off with the mental side of things. Okay, and this is one that I saw. All of these things I saw commonly. I'm not really mentioning anything in any specific order. I just think it's better to start off with the mental and then work on down to the training aspect of this. But Definitely the mental aspect. There were some things that could be worked on at the high school level to prepare those athletes that are to go on, whether it be Division One, Division Two, or Division Three. But it's going to prepare their mind for what's to come, and and it goes beyond just athletics. These are things that will benefit them in life later on. But the first thing would be just teach them a basic work ethic. What's expected when you come in, and the work ethic that you need to train with in order to make progress. It's not just going out to Globo Gym or whatever gym is in your town and having a leisurely workout with friends. They need to come in and train with a specific purpose. And that's something that you can definitely teach, is these are the objectives for today. This is what we're going to accomplish. This is how we go about it. It's not just standing around and chatting between sets. You are always in motion doing something, from actually lifting to spotting to changing weights, to knowing what's going to happen next after you finish that exercise. There's always things that can be going on, and that's really part of the mental process, is always staying active and involved in the workout. Not doing things their own way. And probably a lot of the athletes that I worked with at the college level had more freedom in high school. Maybe they didn't have a strength coach. Maybe they didn't have any leadership whatsoever in the weight room. Maybe they didn't go to the weight room. But at college, it's not your way, it's the team's way. So when you come in, you're expected to do the team's workout, not go off and do your own thing, or, well, I don't really like this exercise. I don't like squatting, so I'm not going to go very hard in squat. No, you're expected to go just as hard as everyone else. So teaching that work ethic, teaching that they are part of a team and they're expected to do the team workout, not their own individual workout, is something that would go a long way, and that carries over to life after college. So definitely something that would help them out with basic overall life skills. And the third thing along the mental lines of training is communication. This just involves being involved with what's going on with them. Do they have an injury? Communicate with them and figure out the plan. Where what I've seen at the college level, especially among freshmen, is they don't tell you they have an injury. They don't tell you that they have this issue going on. They just don't do what you tell them to do. So then that becomes an issue, and then things blow up, or whatever the case may be. But teaching them how to communicate, and some are better than others. Some are great communicators, but I have definitely seen from freshman to senior in a college setting, they completely change in how well they can communicate. Again, this goes beyond sports, and it goes beyond being on a team or being in sports in high school or college. This is something that they can take with them when they're communicating with their boss, instead of just not showing up to work, which, now that I am in a different sort of work setting, I am seeing, especially among younger employees, they just don't show up. They don't call or anything. They don't show up. So teaching these skills, communication skills at the high school level, does go a long ways. All right, so now let's move on to the training aspects of this. And before I go on, I mean, I'm pointing this at the strength coach. It goes beyond the strength coach. Other coaches can work on this too. Teachers can work on this. It's everyone that's involved. But the high school strength coach is in a setting. If he can foster these skills just from that strength, just from the weight room, just from the strength conditioning setting, those things will carry over, especially directly to the strength conditioning setting at the college level. So it's doing what you can do, really. All right, from the training perspective, the biggest weakness that I saw coming out of high school to the college level is that most athletes were not physically developed. Okay, and you can go different ways with this. And the sport coach will always say, hey, they are such a great athlete. I can't believe how good they are. But then I'm looking at them in the weight room and they're so physically undeveloped. They are not ready for the rigors of college athletics, because especially in physical sports, football, wrestling, soccer, basketball, when things start getting physical and they have to go up against people that are much stronger than them, they're going to struggle. They're not physically prepared for the amount of training that they will do, the plyos that they're going to have to do, the number of practices that they're going to have, and how intense and how much harder practice is. So just developing their bodies, not focusing on maximal strength, not focusing on plyos. Focus on general overall development. To me, that's hypertrophy. Develop them muscularly. Okay? Create the base. Don't worry about peaking them out in high school. Okay? I'm seeing a lot of things out of Texas. There's I don't even know who it is. I can't state his name right now, but he posts a lot of stuff, and it comes across my Facebook feed all the time from many different high schools down in Texas. You know, they'll go to these powerlifting meets or whatever, or competitions, and he's like, oh, this high school kid's squatting 600 pounds. And I watch it, and I'm not going to talk about technique or depth or some of the inappropriate things that's there, but the development of the kid, he's not prepared to handle that weight. He's got the strength, the maximal strength, but physically, he's not prepared to handle maximal weights. Take that time in high school. You've got 4 years with them, and just get them to work out. Get them to lift weights. Do reps. One of the pieces of advice that was given to me by Jim Roney many years ago, and he's at the high school level now. This is when I was getting started as a college strength coach. I think I was a graduate assistant at the time at Virginia Commonwealth University, and Jim told me, he goes, just take those throwers. I'm talking about the women's throwers for the track and field team. He goes, just take them out and drag the sled. He goes, just do reps with them, lots of reps. And that really needs to happen at the high school level. Just do reps. Don't focus on maximal strength. Don't focus on you can do cleans, you can do squat, you can do these things, but spend more time just doing reps. Don't even have to take them to failure. Okay, and I actually advise that you don't take them to failure, but just get them to do reps. Develop their bodies. Okay, develop their bodies so we develop the base that we can work from later on. Inside of that, pay special attention to the posterior chain. It's the back side of our bodies that does the work. Okay, all this squatting deep, I'm not against squatting deep. I'm not against the more Olympic style squat where you're sitting straight down, letting your knees go forward. I'm not against that. But that does tend to overdevelop the quads in relation to the hamstrings. Bench, all the benching, kids love to do it, especially the guys. Develops their pecs, develops their shoulders, but they're not taught how to brace themselves and how to pull their lats and use their lats and pull their backs into proper position to bench from. Develop the backside, develop the hamstrings, develop the glutes, the low back, the lats, the traps. Put all your priorities into the posterior chain. Okay? Doesn't mean avoid everything else, but definitely give extra attention to the posterior chain so that when they get to, even in high school, this will pay off. Okay? What does the posterior chain do for you? It helps prevent ACL tears. It helps prevent putting too much stress stress on the knee joint, too much stress on the ankle joint because you're in improper position when you're trying to stop or change directions. It prevents you from overdeveloping the front of your shoulders and putting too much stress on your shoulders because you don't have posterior delts, you don't have the lats, and you don't have the traps to help keep your shoulders in proper position and your posture in proper position. So pay special attention to the posterior chain. Overdevelop it. Okay, we'll catch up on the front side. That's not a problem. But definitely get that posterior chain developed. Technique. Now, this is a hard one. It's not really. It's actually extremely simple. But I can hear college or high school strength coaches, well, I don't know what technique the colleges are going to use because each college strength coach might be different. Who cares? Use what you know. Teach what you know. Okay, if you're going to teach more of an Olympic style squat, teach it and enforce it and make sure they do it correctly all the time. If you're doing more of a posterior chain squat, a powerlifting style squat with a wide stance, sitting back, vertical shins, teach it. Make sure they're doing it correctly. Enforce it. Don't let them go up if they can't do these things correctly. If you use cleans, great. Teach it correctly and make sure they're doing it correctly. If you don't use cleans, don't worry about it. We'll teach them when they get to college. That's not a problem. But whatever you do, doesn't matter. Bench press, incline, overhead, deadlift. It doesn't matter what you do. Teach it in a sound way that you understand, that you're comfortable with, and make sure that you teach it to everyone and constantly reinforce those teachings. Reinforce that technique. Don't be afraid to start them over. At my last school, I would go over technique with everyone the first year I was there. And then the second year I was there, because everyone goes home for summer break and you get all the new freshmen in, instead of pulling the freshmen aside and only working with the freshmen, and I did have some cases where I did this, but I would teach everyone all over. Now, once we got into it, I already had weights for all those returners. So the returners were able to just go after that first day. I say that in a very unstrict way because no one just went in the programs that I had. We had regimented, it was structured. Things happened at a certain time. They didn't just work out freely. But at the same time, I didn't hold them back because they already understood the technique. I didn't hold them back like I did the freshmen. The freshmen had to show me that they could handle correct technique before I allowed them to go up. The upperclassmen already had that. So I was still emphasizing technique, but they were advancing much quicker because they'd already been through technique twice. So my point here is that at the high school level, don't be afraid to teach them every semester or every year. It's just going to make them better in the long run, okay? And they can sit through and listen. I heard a high school athlete not too long back saying he didn't like how his wrestling program was teaching everyone from the beginning when he already knew that because he had wrestled AAU or whatever, USA Wrestling or whatever he was in. I actually applaud the high school coaches in that manner because they were making sure everyone was on the same page in regards to the mechanics that they wanted in their wrestling room. The same thing should happen in the weight room. Teach them over and over and over. The more you teach them, the better it's going to end up being. If you have athletes, and granted, you might have a year where no one goes, I shouldn't say a year, but no one goes, but maybe you don't have very many high school athletes going to college in a particular year, so you really don't focus on it. The next year, you're going to have more. Don't do anything special. Don't try to teach them things that you don't normally do to prepare them for college. Just teach them what you teach. They can learn those other things when they get to the school. You don't know what the school's going to want. They might want something completely different. But if the athletes are receptive to your teaching, by the time they get to college, they're going to understand that the college coach is teaching something different, and they will be more receptive to learning from that coach. Here's another thing on that. Don't bash other coaches saying, oh, well, this technique is wrong, they shouldn't be doing that, and those things. Focus on what you do. Don't worry about all the other things. Don't worry about what every other coach does, because that makes the high school athlete more cynical when they start working with another coach. And all of a sudden they don't want to do that because my high school coach said this. Different is different. Different doesn't necessarily mean bad. So let the high school athlete teach them what you want them to know for your program. Allow them to keep an open mind so that when they go to another program, a college program or whatever else, that they don't reject what the coach is trying to teach them. They need to stay open-minded to that coach. That coach may have a very sound understanding of what he teaches, and it may work very well. Just because it's different doesn't make it bad. Okay. Speed, agility, jumping, and landing. This is one, it is harder to teach these things the longer as time goes on. So if you have the ability or the time to teach the athletes at the high school level proper speed mechanics, it will go a long way. Because after 4 years of doing the wrong thing in high school and they come to college, it's going to be very difficult to change their speed mechanics. Think about how many reps they get running through practice, through your drills, through running on their own. I'm talking sprinting or distance running too. Okay. The number of reps that they get is insane. The more they do it incorrectly, they're ingraining that motor pattern into their body, and it becomes so difficult to change it later on. Okay. In fact, maybe even next to impossible. Probably not impossible, but very difficult. In fact, trying to change it may make them slower in the short term, and they may reject actually changing it because they're going to feel slower. Teach them when they're young. If you have a chance to get to the middle school and the junior high athletes, do it. Teach them these sprinting mechanics when they're at the youngest possible age. It's easier to change it at younger ages than it is. The more they do it, the more plastic it becomes, and the harder it is to change as they get older, when they're 19, 20, 21 years old. Teach them when they're young. The same thing with agility mechanics. Change of direction. Extremely important. This is where injuries come in. It's a huge point of injuries. Teach them how to change direction properly when they are young. Okay. I'm not a big proponent of running around cones for agility. It has its place. It definitely has its place. But at the high school level, teach them to run around cones. It gives them a mark. It gives them a place to stop, focus on their mechanics, and go. Versus what I liked was non-programmed agility, where it's reaction type agility, where they have to react to a stimulus versus running to a cone and then running to another cone. And it's a great way to teach. Cones are a great way to teach. And it will set them up for the future when they get to more advanced training in college. Jumping, proper jumping mechanics. Okay, I've seen too many people try to squat with their knees going way forward. That is hard to change because they get comfortable doing that. Teach them to jump by pushing their hips back and utilizing their hips and hamstrings and quads to complete that jump. Landing mechanics. This is extremely important. Being able to land in proper position, land on the ball of their feet, settle to their heel with their hips back and their knees in good position. not shooting forward where they're way up on the ball of their feet. And yes, when they're in competition, they're going to have to do this on one leg. They're going to have to do it as they're moving. They're going to be doing it not just coming straight down, but they're going to be doing it as they're traveling over a distance. But the more we can teach it at a younger age, the better it's going to carry over to doing it correctly as they go on throughout their athletic career. If you wait until and ignore it when they get to their college level, it's going to be difficult to teach those landing mechanics because they've already been doing it wrong for so long, and it's setting them up for injury. They do far more jumps through college practices than they do, and training than they do at the high school level. So we need to set them up for that early. That's the majority of it right there. Couple notes that I want to point out. Special situations. Okay, for the girls' side of things, the posterior chain. I emphasized it heavy earlier. It needs to be even more emphasized with girls. Okay, ACL tears are common in female athletes. We know that. You see that when they squat. You see it when they're landing. Their knees cave in. You need to get their glutes and hamstrings stronger to a very high degree. Just make them do reps, all right? Make them do a lot of posterior chain reps, glute ham raises, leg curls, if that's all you have. Get them to do leg curls, RDLs, good mornings. Teach them proper mechanics in those two exercises. And just do a lot of reps. Don't focus so much. You focus on the weight. If it's too easy, add some weight. But don't worry about getting them to a certain marker as far as the weight that they're using. Just add a little bit at a time. Hey, you did 10 there. Look pretty easy. Can we throw these 2.5s on? Can we throw the 5s on? Hey, you did 10 a couple weeks later. Hey, you're doing that really well. Can we throw maybe 5 more pounds on each side? But find ways. Dumbbell RDL. I'm not a proponent of dumbbell RDLs, but at the high school level, it might be a good option for you. There's a number of reasons why, and it's not just about the physical aspect of doing the RDL. There's mental issues there as well. So, but bridges for the glutes, bridges, dumbbell walking lunges, anything you can do to develop the hamstrings and the glutes for the girl side of things will pay off in dividends. For the boys' side of things, and this can kind of go for everyone. It's not something that I've hit yet, but definitely with football. Okay, I saw a definite need for flexibility. They come to the college level and they do not have good range of motion. They can't squat properly because their hips and their their hamstrings are so tight they can't be in proper position and get proper depth. Their shoulders, poor flexibility in their shoulders. There's just a number of areas where I felt that the flexibility could be improved. And then you find out, well, yeah, we stretch before practice. Well, that usually involves talking to other players and talking to the coaches and not paying attention, just kind of sitting there and not even really stretching. So actually put some effort at the end of workouts, take a period of time, and actually make them stretch. And make them stretch. Don't just let them lay there in the position. Actually make sure that they're going through a stretch and getting a stretch and developing some flexibility. That's for the static side of things, but even going through the dynamic side, making sure they're going through good dynamic stretches before and or after workouts really will pay off when it goes to having proper range of motion and proper movement ability by the time they get to the high school level, or by the time they get to the college level. That's going to be it for today. Those are things that I saw, and those are just reflections of a college strength coach. Things that I saw coming out of the high school level that could have been done better prior to them getting there, and it would have set them up for further progress and for better progress once they got to college. If you have any questions, any comments, please leave them. I will respond to you. Until next time, always be in the pursuit of strength.